Chair of the Boston City Council Committee on Redistricting. I am joined this afternoon by my colleagues in Councillor Flynn, Council President Flynn, Councillor Murphy at large, Councillor Baker, District 3, Councillor Worrell, District 4, Councillor Mejia at large, Councillor Louis-Jean at large, and Councillor Bach, District 8. This hearing is being recorded and is live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, FiOS Channel 964. Written comments may be sent to the committee email at ccc.redistricting@boston.gov and will be made a part of the record and available to all councillors. If you wish to sign up for public testimony in the chamber, please sign in on the sheet near the door. If you would like to testify virtually, please email Shane Pack at Shane, SHANE, .pack, PAC, at boston.gov. For the link and your name will be added to the list. Redistricting materials may be found on the committee website at boston.gov/redistricting. Today's hearing is on Docket 1186, an ordinance amending City Council electoral districts. Docket 1215, an ordinance amending City Council electoral districts. Docket 1216, an ordinance amending City Council districts. Docket 1273, an ordinance amending City Council districts. And Docket 1275, an ordinance amending City Council districts. Docket 1186 was sponsored by Councillors Ricardo Arroyo and Tanya Fernandez Anderson and was referred to the committee on September 28, 2022. Docket 1215 was sponsored by Councillor Erin Murphy and referred to the committee on October 5, 2022. Docket 1216 was sponsored by Councillors Liz Braden and Brian Worrell and was referred to the committee on October 5, 2022. Docket 1273 was sponsored by Councillor Frank Baker and was referred to the committee on October 19, 2022. And Docket 1275 was sponsored by Councillors Liz Braden and Ricardo Arroyo and was referred to the committee on October 19, 2022. Thank you all for your patience. I would like to start off with this hearing by sharing some background and general information. Redistricting is a process that occurs every 10 years after the federal census to redraw boundaries for our city council districts, the legislative branch of our local city government. In order to reflect population change and ensure equal access to voting and political process under the Voting Rights Act, the City of Boston has 13 members. The Boston City Council has 13 members, 9 elected populous districts, elected by equally populous districts, and 4 elected at large citywide. The United States Census Bureau released population data for redistricting purposes on September 2021, delayed several months due to complications related to the pandemic. The 2020 census reported Boston as having a population totaling 675,647, making the 9 equally populous districts each needing to have as close to 75,071 residents as possible. The acceptable deviation is plus or minus 5% above or below the average, or a total deviation of 6% for the most and least populous districts, meaning a range of 71,318 to 78,825. A general overview of the current districts is that District 2 started off with 13,000 residents, 18% above the average, and District 3 started off with 6,500 residents, or 8.7% below. Following the 2020 census, and under the leadership of Councillor Arroyo, the Committee on Redistricting held a series of 3 preliminary virtual public listening sessions in March and April of 2022. prior to the Boston City Council budget review process, followed by a public hearing held on August 4th, 2022. Recordings are available on youtube.com/Boston City Council/playlists. The committee held a virtual working session on September 16th, a working session in the Piemonte Room on September 20th, a virtual working session on September 23rd, working sessions in the Piemonte Room on September 26th and 27th, a public hearing on September 29th, working sessions on September 30th and October 7th, a meeting to receive public testimony on October 11th, a working session on October 17th, an off-site public hearing in Fields Corner, Dorchester last Thursday, October 20th, a working session last Friday, October 21st, and a working session this morning. Tomorrow morning there will be a working session, Tuesday, October 25th at 10 a.m. in the Ionella Chamber. As the chair of the Committee on Redistricting, I intend to submit a committee report at Wednesday's City Council meeting under the Matters Recently Heard portion of the agenda. It is my intention to recommend the Council take action on one of the dockets presented before the committee. This hearing is to hear testimony from the public, and the remaining working session is for councillors to discuss potential language which may appear in a new draft presented by the chair with the report. I'd also like to read into the record some information about demographic data. The demographic data methodology on ESRI redistricting versus on districtor. It is important to note that the methodology used by the US Department of Justice to code race and ethnicity demographic data for civil rights enforcement and redistricting purposes differs from how most demographers would categorize data for other purposes. The ESRI mapping software follows the conventions recommended by the Department of Justice in their September 1st, 2021 guidance on the use of race and ethnicity data in redistricting. This differs from other commonly reported race and ethnicity groupings, in that it groups those reporting two races, one white and one non-white, as being members of the non-white race reported. Thus, a person reporting white and black would be characterized as black, and all residents of Hispanic or Latino origin, regardless of reported race, are grouped together. Because of this, you might draw the same district on both ESRI redistricting and the districtor outline mapping tool using the same 2020 census data, but each might present different percentages for the demographic breakdown. Districtor is an online mapping tool which allows for convenient sharing of online maps, but their racial demographic breakdowns should be referred to as a rough estimate only. Official demographic breakdowns for redistricting purposes should rely on data presented through the ESRI redistricting using the Department of Justice criteria. I also want to read into the record a memo received from Adam Cederbaum, Corporation Counsel for the City of Boston, from Jeffrey Weiss, Esquire, Adjunct Professor and Senior Fellow at the New York Law School, October 9th, 2022. Key redistricting principles for the Boston City Council. Section 18 of the Boston City Charter requires that districts shall be compact and shall contain, as nearly as may be, an equal number of inhabitants as determined by the most recent state decennial census, should be composed of contiguous existing precincts, and should be drawn with a view towards preserving the integrity of existing neighbourhoods. Acts of 1982, Chapter 605, Section 3. Since Massachusetts no longer conducts a state decennial census, the federal decennial census provides the necessary data for the redrawing of council district boundaries. This memorandum outlines the criteria that the City Council should consider in redrawing of council districts. Required criteria. Population equality. Council districts are required to be equally substantial in population. According to the US Supreme Court precedents, there is a 10% limit in the population deviation from the size of the largest to the smallest district. Based upon the 2020 census, this means that the ideal district size is 75,071 residents, allowing for a plus or minus 5% range. Within those ranges, any deviations from 75,071 residents should be based upon an effort to achieve the other legitimate governmental criteria outlined below. Minority voting rights districts. The voting rights of minority voters must be respected when developing a new map. In general, the Federal Voting Rights Act of 1965, VRA, prohibits the imposition of any voting qualification, practice or procedure that results in the denial or abridgment of any citizen's right to vote on account of race, colour or status as a member of a language minority group. Covered language minorities include American Indian, Asian Americans, Alaskan Natives and Spanish heritage populations. Section 2 of the VRA, the Voting Rights Act, specifically prohibits vote dilution when voters are dispersed among districts, making them an ineffective voting bloc, or if they are overly concentrated or packed in one district, creating an excessive majority. The VRA requires the creation of an effective minority district where it can be demonstrated that the minority community comprises at least 50% of an ideal, contiguous and reasonably compact district voting age population. Minority voters vote cohesively for the same candidates, and there's a significantly high level of racially polarised voting where the majority votes sufficiently as a bloc to prevent minority voters from electing their preferred candidates of choice. The 14th Amendment of the US Constitution prevents racial gerrymandering, prohibiting the drawing of maps that excessively segregates voters by race in a district. It is necessary to comply with the 14th Amendment and the VRA requirements by avoiding discriminatory intent and discriminatory effect of minimising or cancelling out the voting strengths of members of a racial or language minority groups in the voting population. Racial voting data analysis may be used to demonstrate that minority votes are not diluted and that race is not used as a predominant factor in drawing districts, where voting dilution is not an issue. Each district must be evaluated based on local voting patterns and population data. Compactness. Districts should have a minimum distance between all parts of the district, subject to addressing other criteria. Several mathematical models have been developed to determine compactness that are used to compare competing plans. Contiguity. All parts of a district should be connected geographically at some point with the rest of the district. In Boston, almost all districts must include contiguous precincts. Preservation of neighbourhoods. Consideration must be given to drawing districts that respect the boundaries of Boston's recognised neighbourhoods. Other non-required criteria. These criteria can be considered but are not required by federal or local law. Communities of interest. These districts include geographical areas where residents have common geographic interests that include socioeconomic, religious, academic, business, medical, or other recognisable characteristics. Communities of interest might not follow political subdivision boundaries. Boston City Charter prioritised neighbourhoods as required criteria, making other communities of interest a lesser priority in redistricting process. A ban on partisanship, not favouring or disfavouring political parties, candidates or incumbents. Maintaining existing district boundaries, using current district boundaries as a determinant for making the least changes necessary. And those are the non-required criteria. Thank you. So I want to thank everyone for being here this afternoon. We have some folks who are going to join us virtually, and we have folks signed up to give testimony. This is a public hearing, so we will be giving primacy to the public comments and hearing public voice in this space. So the first one I have is Sebastian Delfanti. Good afternoon, Sebastian.
Hi.
I'm allowing, just to let you know, I'm allowing 3 minutes. Try and keep your comments to the 3 minutes, and we'll see how we'll see how we go. Thank you.
Fair enough. Hi. My name is Sebastian Belfanti. I am a resident of the West End, the executive director of the West End Museum, a member of the West End Civic Association, and a board member at the Massachusetts Historical Alliance. I'm just speaking because I'd really like you all to consider keeping the West End together. We're just 3 precincts, so I hope that won't be too hard. And to thank Councillors Bruden and Arroyo for proposing a new map that includes a unified West End. The West End, as many of you are probably aware, was split apart by the city in the 1950s and even lost its name for a period of time. It also lost a third of its landmass in that period. We're not asking for the land back, but we'd really like to be recognized as a equal neighborhood with the other communities in the city, which I know some need to be split up, but for our really tiny little area, I hope you can find a way to keep us together. And I also just want to say that unification, to the degree that it is there for 2 of our 3 districts or precincts, has been really valuable to us. That Kenzie has been a phenomenal advocate for our neighborhood and for my organization. I have a job because of her, in part, but being able to kind of work with someone who is so always there for us, really always there for us, is so important to the neighborhood as we try to kind of re-establish a community identity after years and years of struggling. Thank you very much. I hope you'll consider keeping the West End one neighborhood. Thanks.
Thank you, Sebastian. Next up, Vanessa Snow, followed by Lydia Lowe.
Good evening. My name is Vanessa Snow, resident of Hyde Park, spent most of my life in District 5, and I am the organizing and policy director at Mass Vote. The largest challenge before this body is to shed 13,000 seats from District 2 and to grow District 3. This process is not about redrawing neighborhood borders. The neighborhoods and parishes everyone calls home will exist as they do the same next week. This is about drawing council districts consistent with the Voting Rights Act so that it doesn't dilute the ability for Black, Latino, and AAPI communities, the ability to elect the candidate of their choice. Our coalition stands united in support of a map that grows the opportunity in District 3, preserves opportunity in District 4, and maintains opportunity in District 5 and 7. Through many hearings, meetings, working sessions, I've observed that the majority of this council has expressed a commitment to working collaboratively with this vision, even when subjected to disrespectful, racist, xenophobic comments, threatening statements, and challenges to their leadership. And I'd like to humbly thank those city councilors for their transparency and accessibility and for their commitment to listening to their constituents and community leaders. Please continue to stand steadfast, strong, and united, and vote for a map consistent with the redistricting principles, the directives of the Voting Rights Act, and the goals of our diverse multiracial coalition. And I urge that all of you take your votes this Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Lydia Lowe. I'd also just like to recognise that my colleagues, Councillor Fernandez-Anderson and Councillor Coletta, have joined us. Thank you. Lydia, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'm Lydia Lowe, and I'm here on behalf of Chinese Progressive Political Action. I also am here in support of the goals and approach of the most recently filed Breed and Arroyo map, which seeks to unpack District 4 in order to strengthen opportunity for historically disenfranchised and underrepresented communities to influence and elect candidates of their choice, particularly in District 3 as well as in District 5, to continue to strengthen that district, to continue to support, anchor historically people of color districts in Districts 4 and 7. And as our community is particularly in District 2, which needs to shed 13,000 people, I also need to address something about District 2 to explain that why our Chinese community residents have come out to hearings and asked that Chinatown's 2 core precincts remain with South End's public housing and affordable housing, because we think that it's important to address historically polarized voting patterns, which we have seen within our district over the past 4 decades. And you can say that, you know, our communities have changed a lot, which they have, all of the districts. But if you look at the precinct by precinct voting results as recently as 2021, you still see that polarized, divided voting pattern. And that's why, from our experience, we realize that to increase opportunity as well for historically disenfranchised communities in District 2, it's important to have better population balance between South Boston and the smaller districts, the smaller neighborhoods. And this is not about attacking South Boston or singling out South Boston. Most large neighborhoods are divided between different districts. And the South End is a smaller neighborhood, is already divided between different districts. I also want to clarify something that has been that I said before that has been misconstrued. The opportunity to build political power and influence does not mean that we are against white elected officials or electing a white candidate. In fact, our own organization has consistently supported our current district councilor, who is white, because of his service and focus on working class issues and supporting immigrant rights. Because District 2 needs to reduce population, though, by some 13,000 votes, some of those votes need to come from South Boston. And that's only fair. Because we do have a history of working with public housing allies in South Boston, so we would like to see those precincts with West Broadway Homes and Old Colony remain in District 2, which have actually the most similar voting patterns to ours. And we have a long history of working together with tenants in public and affordable housing in the district. But we just have to say that, some of those 13,000 people, they cannot all come from the South End and downtown. That just would not create a level playing field and would not be fair. And whatever districts that our community is, and we are actually in many districts, we will continue to work for political representation and fairness. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. Shane, can we have anyone on the line for virtual testimony? So we have some virtual testimony for Dr. Nina Estrella. Luna?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, perfect. So good afternoon, or it's almost evening. It's almost time for a drink. So hello, I'm Dr. Nina Estrella Luna. I'm an East Boston resident. I'm a member of the Root Council for Neighbors United for a Better East Boston. We are members of the Drawing Democracy Coalition. We, along with our allies on the coalition, have endorsed and do support the Unity Map, docket 1275, filed by Councilors Breeden and Arroyo. Given the strange redrawing of the precinct lines that was recently completed and the clearly too small number of districts that we have on the city council right now, something that I hope we can start working on once this is all done, the Unity Map does the best job in addressing two primary concerns: Voting Rights Act requirements and reuniting the smaller neighborhoods, all while adhering to the other basic legal redistricting requirements that you summarized earlier, Councilor Breeden. Let us remember that there has been a long tradition in Boston of breaking up small, less powerful neighborhoods in order to maintain the political dominance of certain groups. And that is a tradition that needs to end. Given the population growth in District 2 in particular, there will need to be changes. And as former Senator Diane Wilkerson said earlier, the lines need to be drawn somewhere, which means that some precincts in South Boston will need to move. The argument that there's only one city councilor on this body that can effectively advocate for public housing residents is not only unpersuasive, it implies that other city councilors cannot be trusted to attend to the needs, goals, and aspirations of some of our most vulnerable residents. If that were true, if that person or those persons could not be trusted, then perhaps we shouldn't be trying to protect those councilors from being challenged. The argument that certain neighborhoods can't be broken up is just simply ridiculous. Mattapan, Upham's Corner, Grove Hall, Fields Corner, and Mission Hill, amongst other neighborhoods, have long been split. And for those new to Boston, these are predominantly Black and low-income neighborhoods. South Boston is not going to lose any representation if it has two district city councilors. And I will just end with one reminder to our city councilors. Your goal as public servants is to create equitable opportunities for voters to have an effective chance at electing the representation of their choice, electing the representation they deserve. The Unity Map as the baseline does that better than any other map proposed thus far. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, virtual testimony from Joanna Hines. Joanna?
Thank you, Councillor Reardon. And I guess I can use my camera. I'm calling in to make a request, and I know that I'm not the only one who has put this out there, that Charlestown be moved into District 8. Charlestown has two rivers and a harbor, and we really, we share the Charles River with District 8. So there are a lot of environmental issues that affect both District 8 and Charlestown, and having a unified council, a councilor that was able to protect the whole river where it comes through on the bank of the West End, I think would be great for lots of reasons. We're also, Charlestown has a lot of MGH facilities, Spalding, and then we have MGH over in the Beacon Hill side near the West End. Being in District 8 would also allow for MGH to be in one district and to have one councilor. The North Washington Bridge is a huge problem for kids and their families, and really for all of us that have to get back and forth. And, currently we have a very strong councilor who is working hard to, help resolve the issues that are happening at the North Washington Bridge. But if Charlestown was part of District 8, we would have two voices, two really strong voices. And I think that would be quite meaningful. Finally, the population in Charlestown and in East Boston is growing. And in 4 years, it will be almost too late to move us out. I think this is the moment to do it. And so for those three reasons, the idea, having the river, kind of unifying the river with District 8 so that we can look at the whole picture and all the environmental issues that go along with the river, having more representation around the issue of the North Washington Bridge, which is a major, major issue. And that bridge does spans the headwaters of the Charles. So there is that connection there as far as the land goes. And then our state rep is also involved with the Charles River. So having some alignment between our state rep and our counselor so that the issues that we're working with the same group of people so that we have so that we're being represented well on that front. That's it. That's my request, that you move Charlestown to District 8. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Joanna. I'll cancel that. Anyone else signed up? Samuel Pierce.
Thank you, Chairwoman, for allowing me to speak today. Just want to say greetings to the Boston City Council and to my fellow Bostonians who might be watching today. The beginning of this testimony, I think, should start by saying I don't think that this should be an attack on any one district councilor. I don't think that this should be anything other than an exercise of really the meaning of democracy, since this is where our wonderful country began. And our country began with laws. So part of why I'm very frustrated with this council is because you all are actually a year late. It says in Title 8, Chapter 54 of the Massachusetts General Laws, Section 1, that in the year 2001 and every 10th year thereafter, no later than June 15th, a city by vote of its city council may, or if the existing wards in such city do not contain as nearby as can be ascertained an equal number of inhabitants. Now, I'm going to stop there because you all can read the law for yourself. But the point is that every 10th year would have been 2011, when obviously Frank Baker was elected, 2021, which would have been last year, and it is now 2022, which means that this should have been done June 15th of last year. Now, the significance of this is because you all have a hearing, obviously, next Thursday, October the 27th at 10 o'clock, after there will be a vote on this redistricting issue that talks about public safety. And I would love to be at that hearing, but the problem is I have a summons in my hand summoning the city of Boston to figure out why it cannot comply with the law. And the reason for that is because I was planning on running for state representative, and because this council was unable to certify and determine all of the wards and precincts, the election department was not able to know what the wards and the precincts, and somehow that burden passed upon me. I think that was an unfair burden. But I also believe that some of the district lines in question could have easily been solidified last year if the city council had simply done what the law dictates. And so I'm just going to read one other section because it also calls in the mayor to actually step in if the councilors are unable to do what they're supposed to do. So I strongly encourage you all to read Title 8, Chapter 54, Section 1 through Section 10. I realize that is my time, so thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you for your testimony.
But I would like to submit this summons because it is a real summons, and I would like to see hopefully all of you there on Thursday at 9 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? So any more? So we're waiting for other members of the public. I'll take an opportunity to invite my colleagues to say a few brief remarks in relation to this. I know we've got ongoing working sessions on this topic, so we would call on Councillor Flynn. 2 minutes, if you don't mind, because I'm cognizant of the fact that we still have public testimony to come. Thank you, Council President Flynn.
Thank you, Councillor Braden. I will be very brief because I know this is a public testimony for the public, and it seems like we made a little bit of progress today. But I would highlight not having a vote on Wednesday. I think there's still an opportunity for us to hear more from the public, but also I think there's more work we have to do as a body to make sure that we get this right. And it's more important that we get this right than get it done now. So my recommendation is that we give this process more time so we can take more public testimony, but also that we continue working together, hopefully in a respectful manner. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Murphy, 2 minutes.
Sure.
Just reset my clock.
I don't need the whole 2 minutes. That's okay.
You're good. You know, you're good. You have a good timekeeper in your head there.
I do. Yes.
On you go.
Thank you, Chair. I was hoping to ask a question that we could get an answer, hopefully by tomorrow's working session. But at our working session earlier, I just found out, I'm not sure if other councilors knew, that on Monday, October 24th, and we're about to take a vote on Wednesday, October 26th, that we as a committee, which I am a member of, and that we didn't have any money in the redistricting committee to hire our own attorney, and that's why we're using the mayor's attorney. And if you could just get an answer on that, because I didn't know that that was true, and that have we asked for funds to be available, and did we know about this maybe even during budget season, opera funding, to make sure that we as a council were making sure that we were representing ourselves. I know that many of my colleagues requested that in our next year budget cycle, we have funds, and we did get those passed to make sure we do have more of our own legal and accounting representation going through the other important process, which this year has been budgeting. This is a very important process, and if we ourselves don't have our own legal counsel, and I'm just finding out today on Monday that we didn't. We're a rich city. We have a lot of money this year, that we left ourselves in this position of not having legal counsel to help us through this process, because emotions, personalities, everything aside, this is a very legal process. And we've heard from a few experts the last few days that I think have been wonderful, giving advice and really leaving us, or at least myself, I can only speak for myself, with more questions in a good way, but really thinking about the whole map and the whole city and all of the districts. So hoping we as a body, I'm going to ask through the chair that we get that information of how did we drop that ball, and how do we sitting here, the City Council of the City of Boston, when we only do this once every 10 years. And the last 4 times this has happened, there was legal counsel provided to us. So
I will
thank
certainly
you.
look into that, Councillor Murphy.
The timeline also of when we could have requested would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for reading the memo from Weiss that lays out the criteria and also other non-required criteria, non-required but probably encouraged. And one of the required is preservation of neighborhoods, which I think we're trying to do. So I would like to just say, most of these maps are pretty disruptive. The Braden Arroyo map has 47,000 people moving around, new precincts, new districts, new voting locations potentially, I don't know. Mine only has 29,000. I think we have to take that into account. We're still, I think, I do have an issue with using, what did we split the precincts for and come up with a base map if we throw that out the window and we're gonna use the advocate map to jump off? Because quite frankly, that puts me in about, in just my district, at least 10 or 12 moves that I have to fight to get back to just a starting line. I don't think it's fair, again, that Neponset's getting totally cut out of there. I do think it's a community of interest. I do think it works with District 3. And the interest, again, Dot Ave being transportation and small business. Also business interests being, safe, clean streets. Everybody wants the same thing. And then on my other boundary is the harbor and the Neponset Riverway. In the map, the advocate map that I have here has Bryan District 4 going to 14.8. My map has the exact same number, and it's much less disruptive. And again, I just think that we run the risk of an opposite outcome happening here. So what I've heard from the people that just got up and spoke is they like the advocate map, but they want to go in and split Southie up. So does that mean we're not going to go after the housing developments? That sends me into 7.3, 7.2, and 7.1. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Worrell, Vice Chair Worrell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the public that's here today and everyone that testified. For me, just making sure that we're grounded in the voting rights principle, and also want to just give a big shout out to Councillor Bach for bringing election results data into this conversation. Just want to uplift the neighborhoods of Common Square and Four Corners, making sure that we keep those neighborhoods intact, and also raising the point in the election results is that we're doing everything to preserve and protect historically black districts, to making sure that they can continue, based on the trends on the U.S. Census, whether it's gentrification or displacement, making sure that we're able to continue to elect people of our choice. Thank you, Madam Chair, and looking forward to the continued conversation.
Thank you, Councillor Worrell. Councillor Mejia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate folks raising up the hurry up and slow down situation. However, in August, we disrupted the entire process when we revamped the chairmanship. And so let's just name that in terms of the disruption that has occurred in this process. And I also want to name that we are in a moment where it is beginning to feel like we are trying to throw everything on the wall to see what would stick to prevent us from moving forward. And if this only happens every 10 years, this is not a moment for us to do the status quo or the least disruption as possible. This is the opportunity for us to be as disruptive as we need to be to make sure that we are in line with the Voting Rights Act, right? In terms of what those principles are. So I am of the mindset that we have done a lot of work, and to listening to Sam, I do know that based on COVID and the census and the timeline of when information was gathered, there was some disruption in the timeline in terms of what was written in law and what we are up against. So I just wanted to name that, that there is some discrepancy with that based on what happened with COVID. So as we continue to move forward, I think it's important for us to remind ourselves, A, that this is not about us, B, that we need to move with urgency, and this is not a moment for us to think about change with molasses drip, drip, dry mentality, and we can't now ask us to slow down a process that's already has been disrupted based on a fabricated timeline. So let's just keep moving on and doing the work, and I am in support of voting this Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mejia. Councillor Louis-Jean, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Braden, for your work here. And I also want to thank all the advocates and community members who have been consistent in coming to these meetings in doing a translation job, oftentimes twice, a translation job of translating what redistricting is to our communities, and then a second translation job of translating it into another language. And so I thank community members and advocates for being here and really helping to lead the way on what our map should look like. From the very beginning, we've been pretty clear on what the charge is when it comes to redistricting, the goals of roughly equal population, compactness, contiguity, and making sure that we're complying with the Voting Rights Act within the bounds also of the Constitution. And so I think that there are a lot of maps that sort of tried to get at that, and the advocates in consultation with folks on City Council really worked to create a unity map, and I think we've seen data that can help inform that map. And so I'm grateful for where we are and think that we are making tremendous progress under your leadership and together as a council in sort of looking at that data. Professor Dushin provided us with exceptional data regarding what the maps do and don't do, how to think about the ability of what we're doing to ensure that communities of color are able to elect candidates of their choice or influence candidates of their choice. Does that mean I got to stop talking?
No, it's somebody calling me.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to stop talking anyways, but we've heard a lot from community via emails, out in community meetings, here on the floor, and I think we have the information we need to make an informed decision. So I'm grateful for the work thus far. Of course, redistricting is it's a difficult conversation, but again, and I know that this may be easier for me to say as an at-large counselor, but it really is about the individual voter and not about, an individual counselor. It's about our voters, especially communities of color, are they able to elect the candidate of their choice? And if we start from the voter and then extend outward, a lot of this work does become a lot easier. Not completely devoid of difficulty, but centered here should be voters, which is also why I believe in an independent redistricting commission, but that's a story for another day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Louis-Jean. Councillor Bach.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I feel like I spoke a lot this morning, and I'm mainly here to listen to the public. Grateful to everybody who's been providing us input in this forum and also writing things in and making recommendations. as everyone said, this is a very difficult exercise. It's a combination of a qualitative and a quantitative exercise. There's a lot of different concerns to balance. Some of the ones that I spoke about in particular this morning had to do with the Voting Rights Act, which I do think is something that has to sort of supervene over the process for us. But just grateful for the process, and I want to keep my comments short. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bach. I just want to recognise that Councillor Flaherty, District Councillor at Large, and Councillor Royo of District 5 have joined us. And I think I recognised them when at a previous with Councillor Coletta and Councillor Fernandez-Anderson. Oh, Lord. Councillor Coletta, and I also encourage anyone else who's here who would like to make comment and make public testimony, please sign up and put your name on the list here. Thank you. Councillor Coletta, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am going to keep my remarks brief. I just want to thank folks from my district, Joanna Hines and Nina Estrella Luna, for coming out and providing their comments. I am really here to listen to the community, so I'll keep it brief and leave it at that. And thank you for the opportunity to provide some remarks.
Thank you. I have been corrected, Councillor Flaherty. It appears you were here sooner than some other folks, so you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know your peripheral vision is blocked. I'm in the corner.
It's really bad. I'm having my eyes tested on Friday.
You know, and obviously, I also want to name, prior to the chairmanship change, that the committee should have been holding hearings and putting out maps. We had a constituent, obviously Sam Pierce, here testifying that this process should have started a long time ago in earnest. So I obviously want to recognize and raise up his concern as a constituent. Want to dive in and to see on all of our maps the issue around preservation of neighborhoods, as outlined legally. It's consideration must be given to drawing districts and respecting the boundaries of Boston's recognized neighborhoods. And so I think we need to do a deep dive as to what is a Boston recognized neighborhood. Is clearly Dorchester is a neighborhood, and I'm assuming that, say, Four Corners, Upham's Corner, Cobbin Square, Neponset, Cedar Grove, Lower Mills, I guess, are they also being considered recognized neighborhoods, or are they sort of a subset of, say, Dorchester? And the same with respect to the South End and to South Boston and to Chinatown. We've all recognized and talked about neighborhoods throughout this process, but do any of the maps, does it pass muster that they're given respect to boundaries of Boston recognized neighborhoods? And I throw that back to the chair, to the authors of the maps, and also reiterate my concern for a legal opinion. I understand that we don't have the resources. Maybe we ask for the resources, or maybe we ask for some pro bono legal support, but I think that that should be part of a requirement here, that we're being asked to do a lot of things, but one of the things, because it is ultimately going to have to pass legal muster, that we have some form of legal advice and not be in a position as the legislative branch of city government to depend on the administration's attorney on this one. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Flaherty. I will hold taking any further testimony from councillors for now. I want to round back. Connie Forbes. Good afternoon, Connie.
Good afternoon, all.
I have to silence my what's it here.
Yeah.
Okay, you've got the floor.
Thank you. I appreciate your all being here and listening to us and having the community's involvement. I do want to say that I'm listening to the councillors speaking, and I'm more impressed by the councillors who speak of us, we, and our versus me, my, and mine. So I think that as a resident, I would love to see each of these plans looked at by someone who's impartial to being connected to a certain plan. I like to see impartiality, like almost like rating each one side by side, saying which ones are providing the requirements of the Voting Rights Act and also the requirements of redistricting. I saw a little bit of that, and I think it was too kind, too nice. I think I would want to see a deeper look at the comparisons. I do like when the councillors have been speaking about the numbers and how the numbers work, and they move the numbers as if it's an entire picture, not just taking one piece of the puzzle and saying, I want this piece of the puzzle to fit here no matter what. It's not a good fit, but I want it to fit here. I'd like to see that it's all the pieces that are connected make sense. It feels at times like everyone's focusing on a hyper-focused look at one particular area because that's something that they have an invested interest in, because either they're a counselor there, or there's something that can happen there that helps them somewhere else. I want to see an impartial person look at each of the maps presented and kind of help me as a resident understand the real benefits of the maps to our communities. This is going to be a financial change for us because it dictates funding, and it dictates voting rights, et cetera. But I'd like to see a clear-cut comparison, apples to apples, across all the different presentations, and helping me understand, because again, gerrymandering is something that I am conscious of, and I'd like to make sure that we aren't, setting ourselves up for that. And someone who's impartial, someone who doesn't have a name on these maps, that has have skin in the game in it. I'd like to see someone who's going to look at them totally as if they're, independently. Because I feel as when someone says my, I, and our, when I hear my and my, it just drives me crazy. It's like, it's not your map, it's our community, it's our city. It's going to dictate what happens to all of us, because everything is connected. Everything's interconnected, and you can't have something happen here that doesn't affect somewhere else. And I hear people saying we're going to grow, and we legally cannot look at where something's going to grow to. We're looking at what we have now. In 10 years, we look at what has happened in 10 years. So I'm just really focusing on the law, what is equitable, what is correct, and having someone who's not invested in a specific map give us the understanding of how each map stands up against each other. So I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another person to make testimony online, virtual testimony. Mimi Ramos, you have the floor.
Okay, great. Sorry, I had to get my tech up and running. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Noemi Mimi Ramos. I'm the Executive Director with New England United for Justice. NEU4J represents community residents who come from all walks of life. We are primarily in the Black and Caribbean neighborhoods of Dorchester and Mattapan. 90% of our work across the city is focused on D3, D4, and D5 neighborhoods. And we are looking at the issue of redistricting, not only in the impacts of our district, but also citywide and across the board. We are one of many partners focused on civic engagement across our communities, engaging with residents on a variety of issues, and having our voice heard in the fight for democracy. We are here to stand united with our coalition allies, which represent a diverse set of voices across communities. So a couple of things that we want to just highlight. One, District 2 needs to shed. We know that 13,000 voters have to move out of the district, and we need to make a decision on what this means for the community on the ground. We support moving some of D2 into D3 to legally be compliant with the Voting Rights Act and to uplift the opportunities that we want to see improve in District 3. We want to uplift the need to make D3 an opportunity district to ensure communities of colors and voters in the district have stronger opportunities to elect representations from our neighborhoods. D3 will need to change, and this means D4 will need to accept and take seriously a look at which precincts may need to move over. We stand united in upholding, preserving, and protecting the community voice on the ground in District 4. But again, we encourage District 4 to accept that some of these changes will need to happen. We are here to say out loud that we stand with our Latinx, Black, and API communities to have full and strong representation across Boston. We should be proud as a city with such beautiful diversity of what we represent when we think about Boston as a whole and how far we have come. I have heard today from a few councilors regarding an extension of the vote, and I think that this is irresponsible of the council. And we ask the council to make a decision this week so that we can continue to move ahead as a city on the many issues that are before us. Redistricting is not the only issue on our plate. We want to thank the time of all the city councilors who have heard from community, have taken a serious look at both this process, and we want to stand up and uphold our values and principles in this conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mimi. Councillor Fernandez-Anderson, you have the floor, followed by Councillor Arroyo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate what my constituent, Ms. Forbes, had to say, because I remember bringing this point up at the very beginning in terms of, you know, putting things side by side and making sure that we had everything together, because if we didn't have it all together, if we were just talking about it in pieces, it felt fragmented, but also that we didn't get the full picture, but also that we couldn't compare. I think we should compare the data side by side in that way, and I think we should also compare the precincts and maps in different ways, pictorially and also digitally. We should look at the numbers. I think it adds context in that way we can actually say, and it would be nice to actually have folks just transparently say, you know, with this map, like go map by map and say, with this map, this is my issue, with that map, and then document that and also put that side by side, and so that we can have a real conversation about what exactly is the disagreement, because we continue to have these conversations, not just in the process of the map and how we're piecing it together, but also in the process of us disagreeing with what we have a problem with. And we may agree on some things, and we may disagree on other maps, but agree on some maps. But that picture, that data is not actually have been aggregated for the community. So I really appreciate that, and I think taking it a step further in doing that. But also, I do think that we should stick to schedule and vote on Wednesday, and just continue to encourage my colleagues to, I guess, be open here on the floor with their sentiment or their position on the map. But also be very concrete in terms of like what exactly is the disagreement, and can we lay that out for the public? Can we be more transparent aggregating that? If that's already been done on some level, then I look forward to seeing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fernandez-Anderson. Councillor Arroyo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll keep my comments brief, because I've spoken so much today on redistricting and today's early session. You know, I think these things are hard. That's why they do these every 10 years, and people are understanding of the fact that there's some permanence to what happens in the next 10 years and the framework that this sets the city upon for the next 10 years. And I often think about 10 years ago and what this council looked like from a diversity standpoint, from the ability for some of these districts to be able to effectively make a choice for their candidate of their choosing, and what that looks like today. And I know that the maps that we are talking about today, every precinct, big or small, has an impact eventually in what that map looks like and what the City of Boston's representation looks like. And the stakes of all of that are incredibly high, and I think that leads to higher tensions for everyone who's aware of sort of the overarching goals here. And so for me, I want to say that I'm grateful to you for your chairmanship of this as we've gone through sort of the ups and downs of this, as people have gotten both, you know, I think people have gone on roller coaster rides on some of this, and I think you've handled that really well. But I also want to really thank community that has been steadfast, who are frankly not paid to be here and are taking time to be here and to voice their concerns and to continuously stay on top of this process. I think that has made a big difference in the way in which this process has evolved and adapted. And I think that the map that was presented by yourself, Madam Chair, and me certainly benefited from those voices and from that input and from community input. And so I'm grateful today for your voice. I know we have at least one more day before Wednesday. And so I would encourage people to send in emails, to send in letters, to speak to what their concerns are, and to continue to voice what their concerns are as we get down to the finish line. I do believe that it makes sense to vote on this on Wednesday because we know that folks need to know where they live a year in advance of an announcement, and I have a hard time believing that it's worth stalling that process for people without running into incumbency protection concerns and things of that nature. And so thank you, Madam Chair, for the time. Thank you to the public for their input.
Thank you, Councillor Arroyo. So two more folks have signed up to make testimony. Sister Virginia Morrison Mohammed, and then followed by Senator Diane Wilkerson.
Good evening, Madam Chair and councillors. My name is Sister Virginia Mohammed. I'm the Executive Director of the Grove Hall Neighborhood Development Corporation that sits directly on the District 4 and District 7 line. I'm a lifelong Boston, born and bred here in Boston, Massachusetts. I live here, work here, live my life here. And I, very briefly, Grove Hall Neighborhood Development Corporation does support what is called the Unity Map. We do not support any map that will shrink the Black and brown community in District 7. I want to thank City Councilor, I think Bach, for her analysis. It helped me and us to understand redistricting a little better. I've been to several community meetings, and one of the reasons why I think there's so lack of community participation is because they have taken civics out of the Boston public schools, so young people really don't know and understand enough about politics, and we all know all politics are local. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's get the clock set here.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you to the Vice Chair, members of the committee, members of the council. I'm actually going to be brief. I have 2 points that I'd like to make. One, Diane Wilkerson. I'm a resident of Roxbury and live in D3. Several times there's been comment from councilors about whether Boston is right now in compliance with the VRA, and if we are, then there's no reason to change anything. And I think it is important for the council to note that that just is not how it works. The Justice Department does not move what we call sua sponte, I mean on their own. There has to be a complaint, and if it is no coincidence that all of the redistricting complaints get filed around the actual map drawing, when people challenge the map itself. So they're not coming 5 years from now in between the redistricting to knock on the door to say you're out of compliance. It is the map, it's the drawing process that VRA focuses on. And so the fact that we don't have them knocking doesn't mean anything. It means that when you engage in the process of redistricting, which we're doing right now, that we have to make sure that we do so in compliance with the tenets of the VRA. So I don't want anybody to take any solace in the fact that we're not been sued. There's nothing to sue you over, right? It's about the drawing process. And so it only happens. This is the reason why, if you remember, Dr. Duchin was talking about all the complaints that they are dealing with right now. It's because we've been redistricting all over the country. So in South Carolina, whether it's congressional, whether it's local, the timing is sparked by the actual map drawing process. And so important to note, the fact that we don't have a ruling, there's no such thing. We will know if there is enough support around it, which is really the charge. And that's the challenge, is to draw a map that doesn't draw a complaint. And I appreciate that every single time that this council and committee has had a hearing on it, that it always comes up that that is the context under which you work. Please continue to do so. I'm confident that we're going to come up with something that we can all support. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Wilkerson. It appears that, do we have anyone else? It appears that there's no one else who wishes to make any public testimony. Anyone else? Okay. So, hearing no further requests to make public testimony, this...
Madam Chair, can I make a point, please?
Councillor Baker, you've a...
Thank you.
Oh, Councillor Moret? Okay, hold on. Councillor Baker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Looking for my phone here. So just a quick point here. The difference between my map and the advocate map in the actual numbers, percentages breakdown is nothing at all. They're exactly the same. So white, black, Hispanic, Asian, exactly the same in my map and in the advocate map. Breaks down, so in the 3-district, District 2 that needs to shed, District 3 that needs to add, and District 4 that needs to add. Exactly the same in the racial breakup. The difference between my map and the advocate map is the advocate map, I believe, is divisive because it comes into my neighborhoods and cuts them apart. Another thing that I want to make clear on is in this past state election, Andrea Campbell ran the table in Ward 16. She won all of my precincts in Ward 16, didn't lose any of them as far as polarized. She ran against a white union labor lawyer. We have all the unions in District 3, and she lost because Andrea Campbell's a good candidate and she had the right message. And I would also add that Anissa Asabi George, who's from District 3, by the way, same upbringing as me, same exact neighborhood, lost District 3. Say that again. Anissa Asabi George lost District 3. And my numbers are exactly the same as the advocate map is. The only difference is there's no neighborhoods getting hurt here. I would suggest that we use either your map that was supposedly the jumping off, because I'm concerned that if we're using the advocate map to do one working session on tomorrow and try and come up with a map, I'm already 10 or 12 moves behind. That hurts District 3. That hurts the commonality in District 3. I don't think we need to hurt District 3 the way we want. Someone up here talked about we need District 3 as an opportunity district. Already a opportunity district. 63% not white. That's a coalition district. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Councillor Mejia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. So I think it's important for us to remind ourselves that the reason why we're thinking about District 3 as an opportunity district is because historically it hasn't been able to have the voters elect a candidate of their choice, right? So I think that this whole exercise that we're going through is trying to figure out where we're going to put the overcount that we have in District 2. So I just think it's really important for us not to make it personal. This is about the moment that we have been given here to make this right. So let's just remind ourselves of that. Then I also think it's really interesting that 10 years ago, had this conversation gone differently, then we probably wouldn't have lost so many black and brown people from the city of Boston. I just feel like there's something that is to be said around this whole process that had an entire district lose a big chunk of BIPOC people, which is District 3. So I think that there is something to be said about how we ended up here and for us to really grapple with that. And as we continue to move forward, because we only have a few days left, it's really important for us to remain focused, Chair. It really is important for us to remain focused on the Voting Rights Act, what this exercise is all about, and moving it forth, because as I'm not sure who it was that mentioned it. Oh, I think it was Dr. Estrella Luna or Mimi, is that we have so many other things that are happening in the city. There's violence, there's a lot of other issues that are happening right now. And we have to be able to move quickly because we've done our due diligence to ensure that voices of the people have been heard. And I don't call it the community advocates map. This is the unity map, and that we have worked in this council to find compromise around. It was the map that was compromised between you and Councilor Morel and Councilor Fernandez-Anderson and Councilor Arroyo. This is a map that has found a way to compromise. And if that's not unity, I don't know what is. And I think it's important for us to remind ourselves of the work that everyone has done to get us here. And I am going to again state for the record that we should be voting on this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mejia. Councillor Louis-Jean.
Thank you, Chair Braden. Just wanted to respond to a comment Councillor Baker made. And again, what we heard and what we know is that looking at number and percentages isn't enough to determine, right, 63%, not enough to determine whether that's giving effectiveness to the ability of communities of color to elect the candidate of their choice. And that's what we heard from Professor Dushan, and that's, I think, what the task is. So I want us to remember that you can have a district that is 30%, black, and that be an effective district for that community of color. Or you can have a district that is 70% black, and that may not be enough to express the ability of that community of color to elect the candidate of their choice, which is why the electoral data is really important, and electoral history and mapping what would have happened in an election under these proposed maps really important. So just want us to make sure that we remember that call, that raw percentages without anything else is not enough for us to determine what communities of color are and aren't able to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Louis-Jean. Okay. Would you like to make some closing remarks? I want to thank everyone for their participation this afternoon. This has been a rather intense process over the last last couple of months. I really thank the community advocates and members of the public for watching us on television and writing and emailing and calling and coming to public hearings and coming to community meetings. And I also, this is a very important process, and I want to thank you for your contribution. Tomorrow morning we have another working session in the chamber. We're in the chamber? Yes. We will be in the chamber tomorrow morning for a working session at 10 o'clock, and you're very welcome to attend. So thank you, everyone. I wish you a very good evening, and this meeting is adjourned.